I'm going to show you now how the gingerbread pieces should look and just give you a couple other things that I sort of should have mentioned before but didn't. So right here is my gingerbread pieces, a couple of them. And as you see, they're pretty much the way that they were whenever I cut them. Okay, and what I did, especially for this gingerbread house, I labeled the pieces with the letter that the pieces had on them so that I can know and keep straight the pieces for putting my gingerbread house together. I wanted to show you what a piece would look like if I wasn't so careful with it. Again, the way that you cut it out is the way it's going to bake. So as you see, this piece was not very carefully cut out. It was kind of hard for me to do that because I like to have things all nice and neat and cut out properly, but I figured that I'd show you a piece of it. If you're not careful, what can happen. And whatever way that you have that on the sheet pan before you put it in the oven, that's the way it's going to stay. So right there is a piece of gingerbread that wasn't cut out very nicely, and as you can see, it's going to be hard to put something like that together if you have pieces that are all wonky like that. All right, before we move on to putting the gingerbread house together, the other thing I wanted to show you was that you can take the pieces that you have windows cut out on and you can make stained glass windows. So what I did here was I crushed up some hard candies. There's some watermelon and some lemon drops there. And what I did was I put them in a plastic bag and I just crushed them up. You can use a hammer or whatever you can find to crush those up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some of the candy right in to where the window opening is. I'm going to push this candy into the corners of the windows so that I know that it's going to melt and get into the corners. Some of these bigger pieces I'm going to take out. And then what I'm going to do after I put the candy in there is I'm just sort of going to brush any candy off of the edges of my gingerbread house, because you want the candy to melt inside the windows, but you don't want it to melt onto the pieces if you can help it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that right back into the oven for about 5 minutes or until the candy is melted. And I have a couple pieces here that I've already done, so I can show you. So right here's your gingerbread pieces with the windows in it. And if you put a light in the middle of your gingerbread house, then it's going to show up nicely with the stained glass windows. All right. The only other thing that I would say to do is, if you're going to make the gingerbread, cut it out and bake it the same day as you make the gingerbread. The gingerbread will sort of keep for a little bit, and if you have extra gingerbread left over, I would recommend keeping it until you have your house put together, so that if a piece breaks, you can go ahead and make a piece again and put it in the oven to bake it. But as far as letting it sit for a day or two after you've made it. It's going to be harder to roll out and harder for it to look nice if you don't do that the same day. So I would just recommend that you cut the pieces out. You don't just make the gingerbread and just leave it for the next day. That you take the time to make the gingerbread and cut your pieces out and bake them in the same day. It'll go a lot better if you do that. So the next step is to put this house together, and that will be in the next video. So until then, see you later.